What's up, you guys? We are back today to recap episode 5 of Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup. This episode picks up where we left off last week with Ryan being ticked off about Christy, his mother-in-law, talking to Ken, Gypsy's ex-fiance, and staying in communication with him. And understandably so. Gypsy was a little bit too honest about her feelings when it comes to Ken, and it really upset Ryan, especially to hear that she was crying about him. She told him that she was heartbroken over the fact that Ken actually dumped her because he thought it was what was best for her at that time, and it wasn't actually because he didn't want to be with her. So this very clearly confused Gypsy a lot. It stirred up a lot of feelings for her, and she's really quite obviously thinking a lot about Ken, even though she says repeatedly in this episode that she is married, she's committed to Ryan, and she really wants to work on their marriage and try to make things work. So in an attempt to bring them closer together, they decide to adopt a puppy, which I'm pretty sure is a terrible idea. But on the way to pick up this new puppy, Ryan starts harassing Gypsy about who she's texting. He's looking over her shoulder while he's driving, trying to read her text messages. And this is just big red flag behavior on his part. But as it turns out, she was texting her sister. And there's even a part where he sees an address exchange of some kind and starts questioning her about whose address it was and what the texts were about, and basically is just grilling her about the conversation. Then he randomly brings up Ken again, and he asks her if she's had any desire to reach out to Ken, and she's like, no, why are you... She just seems really confused about why he's even bringing it up. And then he goes on to say, oh, yeah, I know. I trust you. I don't think you want to talk to him. This is why I love you. Basically saying that he trusts her completely while also trying to see what her text messages say. She very clearly gets irritated by him. She's like, I'm just texting my sister. And I totally understand. It would have annoyed me too. There is nothing that ruins a relationship faster than when partners don't trust each other and they're constantly trying to catch one another, doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. It just shows a huge lack of trust. And then we cut to Christy and Gypsy's dad, Rod, talking about the whole Ken situation. Rod is basically saying, yeah, you're wrong for talking to him, and you need to stop talking to Gypsy about what Ken is saying. It is quite disrespectful to her marriage to Ryan, and he's basically tells Christy to just stay out of it. Christy says that she's just trying to help Gypsy get closure on the whole thing, and that Ken deserves to be able to tell his side of the story because he is quite the topic of conversation on this show. Personally, I think that she just really liked Ken and that she doesn't really like Ryan. I do have my reservations about Ken, though, for sure. This whole episode, I feel like on the one hand, Ryan is really insecure and jealous and everything and not all that trusting of Gypsy. But on the other hand, Gypsy does say a lot of things that almost seem like she's purposefully trying to make him jealous and uneasy. Like the fact that she wants to wear leggings to show off her body while she's hanging out with her sister on their girls' day out. And then Ryan brings up Mia talking shit about him, which is really interesting. So it's not just Christy that feels some kind of way about Ryan. Mia also is iffy about him. So Ryan drops Gypsy off with Mia and they head out on their girls' day together. And it's really quite nice to see because they're both really excited to have a sister to hang out with and do sisterly things with like this. So they're both really excited. Gypsy talks a little bit about the nose job that she plans to get, which we will see more of in the next episode and later this season, along with her new teeth, which I'm pretty sure we will see that process as well this season. Gypsy is really funny in the nail salon because she's never been in a massage chair before, so we get to see her experience that for the first time. And she's just really giggly and bubbly the whole time that she's out with her sister. You can tell that she's really comfortable with Mia and that they have a really good relationship. Then Gypsy starts talking about Ryan. So I don't think that Ryan needed to be worried about what Mia was going to say. I think he needed to be worried about what Gypsy was going to say because she starts talking about him pretty much immediately. She said that she's learning a lot about him by living with him. Like she didn't know that he snored like a grizzly bear apparently, and that she has to wear earplugs to bed. And she also complains a bit about how much clutter he has and how it's a serious problem for her because her mother was a hoarder, and it's just very triggering to be surrounded by so much stuff. She said she's already needing to take some time away from him here and there, where she just goes out on the balcony to get away from him, and that she needs me time because she just gets too overwhelmed, which I can totally see. He seems really smothering, so I can definitely see her needing to just get away and sit by herself for a little while. Then, of course, we get back on the topic of Ken because of course we do. He seems to be the star of the show. She gets Mia up to speed on the whole situation with Christy and the conversation that they had about Ken and why he actually decided to leave her originally. Again, she's very honest, a little bit too honest about her feelings in this situation. I really admire that she's open and honest about everything, but I think sometimes in order to protect your partner's feelings, you need to just not say every little thing that pops into your head. Because I can imagine having to hear this stuff straight from Gypsy in real time and then again have to see the way that she talks about him in this series. I feel like it's probably really hard for Ryan. I do kind of feel bad for him when it comes to that. It's got to be embarrassing that, you know, your wife is on TV talking about her ex-fiance constantly. And honestly, I don't think that he needed to see or know how emotional she got over the whole Ken thing. I mean, obviously we all know that they end up back together and that she is now in the middle of divorcing Ryan, but it's just painful to watch how obvious it is that their relationship is not good. It's not healthy. They have far too many issues for people who have not been together for that long. And there's a huge lack of trust between them. It's really sad. Gypsy mentioned to Mia that during the argument that she and Ryan had about this whole thing with Ken, that he told her, go just be with Ken if you want to. Tell me now if that's what you really want. And I totally believe that he says this to her often because he says it on camera later on in the season. Now, this next scene is kind of uncomfortable, and I really don't want YouTube to get upset with me for talking about this sort of thing. But I'm going to try to be as delicate as I can here, okay? So Gypsy confides in Mia a little bit about her sex life. Now, this is the thing that I don't even know if she told Ryan that she said some of this stuff on camera because he was mad at her for talking about it on camera. But this part in particular, I don't know, and it could be quite embarrassing for him depending on the kind of person that he is, I guess. But she tells Mia that she's never been able to climax and that she has a lot of mental blocks that keep her from being able to get there just because she has been through a lot in her childhood. If you've watched the documentaries, then you know, or at least the prison documentary that came out before this series, then you'll know what I'm talking about. There was a situation, I believe, with her grandfather. So it's really tough. And I can imagine that this area in her life is a struggle for her. Not only that, if you know the details of her case, there was a lot of stuff in this kind of department that happened that I'm not going to get into. If you're interested, go look up the Gypsy Rose, case and read about the crime and everything that happened directly after. But I can understand why she struggles with this. And again, this is just Gypsy kind of oversharing. She then goes on to say that a couple nights ago, her and Ryan had unprotected sex and that she's a little bit nervous about being pregnant. She said she hasn't been able to get to the gynecologist yet. She's fresh out of prison, so she's having to find a new primary doctor and all of that, and it's a process. So she and Mia pretty much agree that it is not the right time for Gypsy and Ryan to be having a baby, and Mia actually knows a lot about this. I guess she's in school for this sort of thing. I don't know if she's going to be a nurse or what she's in school for, but she mentions the fact that she just learned about this in school and that she actually has 72 hours to take the morning after pill, which is the emergency contraceptive. So Gypsy thinks that this is a good idea and decides to go ahead with it. But, she has to tell Ryan about it. So she decides to FaceTime him while they're in the car. And you can see how nervous she is and that she's She's laughing a lot through the whole conversation. She's trying to explain to him what the conversation was and that she wants to get the emergency pill. And you can tell that Ryan's unhappy, but he does kind of try to just like play things off on the phone. But he does say like, hey, that's our business. Why are you talking about this right now? So as soon as she hangs up the phone with Ryan, she says he's so mad. She can tell that he's pissed. And they actually end up getting into a pretty big fight later on that night about this whole thing, mainly because she had the conversation on camera. So I think a part of it is that he was probably upset about her not wanting to have a baby with him right away, because I think that he's really trying to push her. He wants to have the wedding ceremony and the reception. He wants to have a baby. I think he really wants to do all of the things. And Gypsy is like, hang on, we need to make sure that this relationship is going to work before we do anything, which I think they should have thought about before they got married in prison. But anyway, he gets upset about her having the conversation on camera. And so while they're arguing, since the reality TV cameras aren't around, Gypsy takes out her phone and decides to record him while they're having this argument. Now, on the one hand, I feel like Gypsy should be allowed to talk about her life and her experiences and struggles. I mean, that's the whole point of this show, is to show her adapting and learning how to live life outside of prison as a free person. So these kind of conversations are kind of important, actually, for us to see. But on the other hand, I totally understand why Ryan would not want any of that on camera. It is kind of embarrassing. It's not, they're talking about a private part of their life. That being said, he did spend the entire last episode talking about how the D is fire, like over and over again. So I don't know why it's okay for him to talk like that, but for her to not have this kind of serious conversation with her sister on camera. It kind of feels like he can say whatever he wants, but he doesn't want her just saying whatever she wants. And he does bring up the fact that he's a school teacher and that people are going to see this. But again, like I said, they've all heard you say that the D is fire like 500 times. I don't know why that's more appropriate than talking about, not wanting to get pregnant. Now, as far as her pulling out the camera and recording him during a fight, I do think that that's a little weird. I don't know if she was doing that because she was getting scared. I feel like I might think that it was okay if she was like getting scared of the way that he was acting. She does say that he switches things up when she turns the camera on. So I'm kind of interested to know if maybe he was really freaking out and she was trying to either get evidence of him freaking out, or if she was turning on the camera to try and get him to chill out. So Gypsy actually says during this argument that Ryan is starting to remind her of her mother, Dee Dee, who was very controlling about what Gypsy said and who she said it to. And this is just very triggering for her. She gets emotional while she's trying to explain this to Ryan. They do kind of seem to work things out. She feels like she's being told what she can talk to her sister about, and Ryan was like, no, it's not so much that. It's more just the whole it being on camera thing. I felt kind of bad for her in this whole scene just because I feel like she's kind of like me in that she is an open book and she overshares a lot. Like, I will talk to a complete stranger about literally anything. If you ask me a question, I will answer it. Like, I have a really hard time filtering out what I should talk to people about and what I should just not say out loud. And I feel like she has that same sort of thing about her. And it might be just like kind of a subconscious overcompensation for the fact that she has been silenced for so long. Her whole childhood, she wasn't allowed to speak freely. And then, in prison, it changed a little bit, but she still wasn't really able to say and do whatever she wants. So now I think she's just kind of doing really whatever she wants and saying whatever she feels because she can now. So I think that maybe there needs to be a happy medium in there and that she needs to like filter a little bit, but I totally get it. I have no excuses and I overshare all the time, which I think is probably why I want to do YouTube so bad. Just so I have people to tell random thoughts to. I also wrote down here in my notes that I don't think that she's had enough experience developing normal relationships outside of prison. And she really needed some time before living with a man, being in a marriage. She really needed some time after getting out of prison to just kind of learn how to live life. The end of this episode is actually kind of crazy because we finally are introduced to Ken. He wanted to do an interview, apparently. That's what the caption said on the screen. It says that he wanted to do an interview on camera. I guess to try and clear his name and explain his side of everything, because he is talked about quite a lot on the show and in the media and in all of the interviews that Gypsy did. As soon as she got out, she mentions him so much. So on one hand, I can kind of understand him wanting to, speak because he's being talked about publicly in this way. On the other hand, it just kind of sketches me out a little bit. I'm not sure if he's in this for the right reasons, if he's just trying to make some money off of the situation, or if he is genuine in his feelings toward Gypsy. I have seen some drama popping off on TikTok about him, and actually an ex-boyfriend of his coming out and saying some stuff. So I don't know, I'm starting to get a little bit worried that maybe Ken is not what I thought he was going to be. I don't know, I had high hopes for Ken, but now I'm starting to get a little worried. Of course, we don't really hear very much from him before the episode ends. We will pick up with his interview, his on-camera interview in next week's episode. We'll also see Gypsy start the process of getting her nose job. And it looks like she starts having some really tough conversations with Ryan about her feelings about Ken and that she misses him and stuff. Again, telling Ryan way too much, I think, about her feelings. I can tell that this is definitely the beginning of the end for those two. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode, and if you haven't already, do consider subscribing to my channel and giving this video a like. It really helps me out here on YouTube. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again real soon. Bye!